So, Jason, there's a word we use a lot in the PKI community and is actually coming up in public safety community discussions more of late. That word is CPS.
Yeah, people throw around that term a lot, and I don't think people who are on the periphery, they hear the word and they kind of get scared because it's, it's typically written by people. A CPS is typically written by people who really, 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 really know their stuff. That's been my experience.
A CPS is a certificate practices statement.
Right on.
Let's say that.
Yep.
And what it is it's a public statement by the CA. You can absolutely have a CPS for your own internal CA, and that is a best practice that we recommend. But then at that point, that's your internal, it's your CA. You can do what you want. In the public space, what a CPS is it's a statement by the CA that explains what the CA will do as a public CA for misissuing certificates and other related behavior, so that, and it's published to the world, so that any individual can go and read that and understand how that relates to the active certificates that are out there in the world.
So Tim, I'll characterize that after you've said that. A lot of people, when they think of auditors, like just an auditing system, they think the auditors are, laying down the rules. When in reality, quite often, the rules are told to the auditor, and the auditor's job is to make sure you are doing what you said you were going to do.
Absolutely, 100%. The auditor is supposed to have an opinion on whether or not the stated rules are being met. So in the case of a web trust audit, there are a set of rules that are captured in the BRs that are there no matter what for everybody. But then in addition to that, there will be a certificate practices statement, which is a requirement for a public CA. And the auditor also has to vet if your published CPS accurately reflects your behaviors. Or to flip it around, if your behaviors are compliant with what you said you would do in the CPS.
To make it real for the audience, give us some examples of what a CA might put in a CPS.
These are the methods we use to do DCV. These are the methods we use to do to establish authority of the certificate requester. Oftentimes, the CPS is for a public CA. The CPS mostly is referencing other documents, the BRs. So the CPS mostly will be, we use these methods, or we may use these methods as detailed in the BRs, 7.1.4.14. Right?
So final question on this then to me is, it might be surprising to some people that the CAs all have their own. The CAs can operate differently if they're all following BRs.
Yeah.
But the way in which they write their CPS, some of the methods in which they comply to BRs, there will be differences, is the point.
Yeah, and there's not a hard structure that your CPS is expected to follow. It's considered to be a best practice, and most people do this to try to marry it to those outside documents so that they're easily navigable and they can be read together. And that's also in the CA's best interest because it makes CA-based errors, I think, less likely to occur. But of course, public CAs had CPSs before we had the baseline requirements. So when the BRs came in, there's no way that everybody's CPS was going to happen by coincidence to match that format. And so over time, we've seen a change in the industry where CPSs have become closer and closer aligned with these published documents that we have to follow.
Right on. A lot of people, as you said, we're talking about here very specifically about certificate practices statements by public CAs. It's extremely common practice for people to set up their own private CAs with their own CPS.
Yeah.
And again, these are written by people who typically really, really know their stuff and why it's written a certain way. Choice of words is incredibly careful. And I find, Tim, that and this is just what I've experienced over the years watching people think through CPS. They're kind of spooked by them in a way because you feel like you're locking yourself in,
Yeah.
right, to certain rules.
I think the stakes are lower when it's a private CA. When it's a private CA, it's your document. Okay, we're going to talk about what we're going to do. It's like before you and I record an episode to say, what are we going to talk about, Jay? Oh, let's talk about CPSs. Okay, we'll explain what CPSs are. That's our CPS for this podcast, right? And the stakes are relatively low in that if you and I got distracted and we talked about our cool new watches instead, then yeah, we wouldn't have an arable episode, but other than that, it would be fine, right? So in your internal PKI, if it turned out that your CPS was misaligned with your practices, that would be valuable because you'd say, okay, either we didn't imagine and conceive it, the way we imagined and conceived it in the beginning doesn't match what's actually good for us, or we've got practices that we don't want and we need to fix them, right? That is the value of a CPS and an internal PKI is you have that process. You may say, look, the thing that we sat and wrote 3 years ago isn't the thing we really want to do. So let's go change that thing that we sat and wrote 3 years ago. Or you may say, ooh, we're getting this wrong. Let's fix it, right?
Yes.
In terms of our practices. So in an internal PKI, a CPS is an incredibly useful tool for governance and quality assurance. It's the same thing in the WebPKI, except that the governance and quality assurance are being done by somebody other than the CA.
Right on.
Right.
So I think we need to have an episode, Tim, that we should record very soon about what's going on with CPSs and some of the discussions that are going on.
Hot topic right now in the WebPKI, and that's something I think let's do its own episode on for sure.
Thanks, Tim.
All right. Thanks, Jason.